Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. Without further ado, returning to The Invisible Man as read by Lord Naren White. "It's devilish hard," said Mr. Marvel. This was quite ineffectual. He tried another tack. "What do I make by it?" he began again in a tone of unendurable wrong. "Oh, shut up," said the voice, with sudden amazing vigor. "I'll see to you all right. You do what you're told. You'll do it all right. You're a fool and all that, but you'll do." "I tell you, sir, I'm not the man for it, respectfully, but it is so. If you don't shut up, I shall twist your wrist again," said the Invisible Man. "I want to think." Presently, two oblongs of yellow light appeared through the trees, and the square tower of a church loomed through the gloaming. "I shall keep my hand on your shoulder," said the voice, "all through the village. Go straight through and try no foolery. It will be the worse for you if you do." "I know that," sighed Mr. Marvel. "I know all that." The unhappy-looking figure in the obsolete silk hat passed up the street of the little village with his burdens and vanished into the gathering darkness beyond the lights of the windows. Chapter 14. At Port Stowe. 10 o'clock the next morning found Mr. Marvel, unshaven, dirty, and travel-stained, sitting with the books beside him and his hands deep in his pockets, looking very weary, nervous, and uncomfortable, and inflating his cheeks at infrequent intervals, on the bench outside a little inn on the outskirts of Port Stowe. Beside him were the books, but now they were tied with string. The bundle had been abandoned in the pine woods beyond Bramblehurst, in accordance with a change in the plans of the Invisible Man. Mr. Marvel sat on the bench, and although no one took the slightest notice of him, his agitation remained at fever heat. His hands would go ever and again to his various pockets with a curious nervous fumbling. When he had been sitting for the best part of an hour, however, an elderly mariner, carrying a newspaper, came out of the inn and sat down beside him. "Pleasant day," said the mariner. Mr. Marvel glanced about him with something very like terror. "Very," he said. "Just seasonable weather for this time of the year," said the mariner, taking no denial. "Quite," said Mr. Marvel. The mariner produced a toothpick and, saving his regard, was engrossed thereby for some minutes. His eyes meanwhile were at liberty to examine Mr. Marvel's dusty figure and the books beside him. As he had approached Mr. Marvel, he had heard a sound like the dropping of coins into a pocket. He was struck by the contrast of Mr. Marvel's appearance with this suggestion of opulence. Thence his mind wandered back again to a topic that had taken a curiously firm hold of his imagination. "Books," he said, suddenly, noisily, finishing with the toothpick. Mr. Marvel started and looked at them. "Oh, yes," he said. "Yes, they're books." There's some extraordinary things in books," said the mariner. "I believe you," said Mr. Marvel. "And some extraordinary things out of 'em," said the mariner. "True, likewise," said Mr. Marvel. He eyed his interlocutor, and then glanced about him. "There's some extraordinary things in newspapers, for example," said the mariner. "There are." "In this newspaper," said the mariner. "Ah," said Mr. Marvel. "There's a story," said the mariner, fixing Mr. Marvel with an eye that was firm and deliberate. "There's a story about an invisible man, for instance." Mr. Marvel pulled his mouth askew and scratched his cheek and felt his ears glowing. "What will they be writing next?" he asked faintly. "Austria or America?" Neither, said the mariner. Here. Lord, said Mr. Marvel, starting. When I say here, said the mariner, to Mr. Marvel's intense relief, I don't, of course, mean here in this place. I mean hereabouts. An invisible man? Said Mr. Marvel. And what's he been up to? Everything, said the mariner, controlling Marvel with his eye, and then amplifying. Every blessed thing. I ain't seen a paper these 4 days, said Mr. Marvel. Ipping's the place he started at, said the mariner. Indeed, said Mr. Marvel. He started there, and where he came from nobody don't seem to know. Here it is, peculiar story from Ipping, and it says in this paper that the evidence is extraordinary strong. Extraordinary! Lord, said Mr. Marvel. But then, it's an extraordinary story. There is a clergyman and medical gent witnesses. Saw him all right and proper, or at least away didn't see him. He was staying, it says, at the Coaches and Horses, and no one don't seem to have been aware of his misfortune. It says aware of his misfortune, until in an altercation in the inn. It says his bandages on his head was torn off. It was then observed that his head was invisible. Attempts were at once made to secure him, but casting off his garments, it says, he succeeded in escaping, but not until after a desperate struggle, in which he had inflicted some serious injuries. It says on our worthy and able constable, Mr. J. A. Jaffers. Pretty straight story, eh? Names and everything. Lord, said Mr. Marvel, looking nervously about him, trying to count the money in his pockets by his unaided sense of touch, and full of a strange and novel idea. It sounds most astonishing. Don't it? Extraordinary, I call it. I've never heard tell of invisible men before. I haven't, but nowadays one hears such a lot of extraordinary things that all he did? Asked Marvel, trying to seem at his ease. It's enough, ain't it? Said the mariner. Didn't go back by any chance? Asked Marvel. Just escaped and that's all, eh? All? Said the mariner. Why ain't it enough? Quite enough, said Marvel. I should think it was enough, said the mariner. I should think it was enough. He didn't have any pals. It don't say he had any pals, does it? Asked Mr. Marvel, anxious. Ain't one of a sort enough for you? Asked the mariner. No, thank heaven, as one might say, he didn't. He nodded his head slowly. It makes me regular uncomfortable. The bare thought of that chap running about the country. He is at present at large, and from certain evidence it is supposed that he has took. I suppose they mean the road to Port Stow. You see, we're right in it. None of your American wonders this time. And just think of the things he might do. Where'd you be if he took a drop over and above and had a fancy to go for you? Suppose he wants to rob, who can prevent him? He can trespass, he can burgle, he could walk through a cordon of policemen as easy as me or you could give the slip to a blind man. Easier! For these here blind chaps hear uncommon sharp, I'm told. And whenever there was liquid he fancied. He's got a tremendous advantage, certainly, said Mr. Marvel. And, well, you're right, said the mariner. He has. All this time Mr. Marvel had been glancing about him intently, listening for faint footfalls, trying to detect imperceptible movements. He seemed on the point of some great resolution. He coughed behind his hand. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.